UFC Nashville Derrick Lewis versus Tallison Texeira just took place. Overall, very enjoyable card. All right, there were a few fights I want to complain, like the co-main event, which we'll get to later in the video. But overall, solid fights from the early prelims all the way up to the main event. And this is gonna be my recap for every single fight on this card. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. All right, we're gonna start off with the first fight: Fatima Klein versus Melissa Martinez. This was a pretty good fight. Fatima Klein actually looked very sharp. Her kicks were very effective throughout the entire fight, and in the third round, she was able to find the knockout by throwing the 1-2, but feinting the left hand in order to set up a high kick. Nasty head kick finish. Melissa Martinez. You can clearly tell that she was out from the head kick, but Fatima Klein just went down there throwing some nasty ground and pound after. The ref called the fight off. And overall, it was a very impressive fight. Not often do we get like technical like KOs in the women's divisions, but it seems that Fatima Klein is a step above like most of the women's fighters in the strawweight division in terms of striking. So hopefully Fatima Klein gets to build herself up as a prospect, and so that we can see her challenge like the top of the division, potentially get to the belt. I'm not exactly sure yet because I don't think Melissa Martinez is exactly the best level of competition. But Fatima Klein looked very good, and I think she's going to be very promising from here on out. All right, we're going to move on to Mitch Ramirez versus Mike Davis. Mike Davis won the fight via second round knockout. Now, there were some concerns. The first round, nothing really happened. Mike Davis kind of just held the body triangle for the entire round straight. Mitch Ramirez, doing emotes and all that stuff, like because Mike Davis can't seem to secure the rear naked choke. But at the same time, Mike Davis was clearly in control of the round because Mitch Ramirez didn't bother to do anything outside of defending the rear naked choke and throwing emotes. All right, and in the second round, Mitch Ramirez, thinking that Mike Davis is gassed out, proceeded to like try to unload on Mike Davis. Little did he know that he would be gassed out after two combinations. So Mitch Ramirez proceeded to wilt. Mike Davis proceeded to build himself back into the fight. And then from there, it was one way traffic before Mike Davis ultimately slept him out. Mike Davis, again, I think it's because he's been so inactive. I don't know what's really wrong with Mike Davis in terms of like the cardio. That is kind of concerning. Like, I'm not gonna trash Mike Davis because, like, again, he won the fight. But against like higher level competition, I can definitely see Mike Davis struggling because I don't know. He didn't really do throw have that much output in the first round. All he did was secure the body triangle and like go for like one or two takedowns. But he was very gassed from that, so it was very surprising to see. Again, it's also Mitch Ramirez as well, which let's be real, Mitch Ramirez shouldn't be in the UFC. But I guess good job for Mike Davis for just you know facing through adversity and then finding the knockout shot. And Mike Davis, hopefully he can be more active from here. Because Mike Davis usually isn't the most active fighter. Like we have to typically wait for like at least a year before he comes back into the cage. So yeah, hopefully he's like what? I think he's no, he's on a one fight win streak against Mitch Ramirez. But yeah, I hope Mike Davis will be able to build upon that win streak pretty soon. All right, now moving on, we got Kennedy Nizuchuku versus Walter Walker. You know, Walter Walker, like absolute heavyweight legend, got his third heel hook submission over Kennedy Nizuchuku. Hey Tom Aspinall, we got Walter Walker. We're good. Walter Walker out here, reaping the hooks of every heavyweight in the division. This guy's the reincarnation of Ryan Hall, except for the fact that this guy can actually shoot offensive takedowns and not just like fucking Imanari roll and do some roly poly shit. But yeah, overall, I thought Walter Walker, he kind of looked a little bit goofy. Like I didn't think it was gonna play out like that, but turns out Walter Walker, he just like aggression maxed, and Kennedy Nezuchuku like panicked because I guess like a 6'4" walrus is like running at him full speed, trying to take him down. I guess you don't really think about like throwing any punches or in order to like evade in order to counter the shots. But I guess good job for Walter Walker. Is he gonna beat Tom Aspinall? Probably not. But there is a chance, you know. It's crazy to say that because Tom Aspinall's like only loss that's like actually on video is to him like tapping via heel hook. And Walter Walker is the master of heel hooks, you know? Pretty soon, people are going to actually be taking Walter Walker versus Tom Aspinall seriously. For now, I'm just going to be treating it as a meme. But I've been saying this. I think Walter Walker has been underrated. I think he's around like top 10 level ish. From there, I'll probably pick like some fighters to, actually not get heel hooked in the first round and then beat him up on the feet. But, I think Walter Walker really showed that again, he's like top 10 level in the heavyweight division because, not a lot of heavyweights, really know what a heel hook is. So, good job to Walter Walker. All right, now we're gonna move on. Lauren Murphy versus Eduardo Mora. This was kind of a bathroom break fight. You know, nothing much really happened. Like Eduardo Mora, like yeah, she was able to take down Lauren Murphy and just hold her there, like maintain dominant position, but she didn't really go for anything. Lauren Murphy, I remember at some points was trying to use her like Kimura sweep, but that didn't really work because I don't know, Eduardo Mora is not retarded. And it was a pretty dull fight, I'll give it that. Like Eduardo Mora really couldn't do much of anything with dominant position. And in the third round, she gassed out, and Laura Murphy was trying to build back some steam. And she also almost had Eduardo Mora in a guillotine at one point in the third round. Ultimately, I think Eduardo Mora won 29-28. Not the most interesting fight, but as for Laura Murphy, she retired. You know, I guess God bless her. Like I don't really remember her fights. You know, she hasn't fought in like ages prior to this, so it was kind of hard for me to like really sympathize with her like retirement and stuff. But I guess good job for Lauren Murphy, and prayers up for her. Like I hope she does well in her like next chapter in life. And as for Eduardo Mora, I guess good job for winning. Do I think she's gonna make it like far in the flyweight division? Not really, but I guess Eduardo Mora wins. All right, there's nothing much to say else about that. All right, now moving on, we got Jake Matthews versus Chidi Njokuani. Now I picked Chidi Njokuani in this fight. Little did I know that Chidi Njokuani will be completely helpless on the ground against Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews was able to close the distance, and then in the clinch, Chidi Njokuani was getting a bunch of knees in the clinch, and then Jake Matthews timed a perfect sweep. And from there, Cheating and Njokuani didn't know what to do. Jake Matthews immediately jumped on the back, locked in the rear naked choke. Cheating and Njokuani tried to shrug him off at some point, but I think he was too late with that. Like he was very hesitant, and he didn't. He wasn't exactly sure of like how he could get Jake Matthews off his back, which is how Jake Matthews was able to secure the choke. But fair game to Jake Matthews. I didn't expect this necessarily because although I was kind of thinking that Jake Matthews can pull this off, I just thought that Shinya Njokuani was gonna have advantages, like in the kickboxing range and in the clinch. But no, turns out Jake Matthews is a lot better than Chidi Njokuani. The sweep again was absolutely clean, and overall, I think Jake Matthews deserves a top 15 level opponent. And as for Chidi Njokuani, it's really tough. I don't know where he goes from here. Like he doesn't really belong in welterweight. Like he missed weight a bunch of times, and at middleweight, it's clear that like he doesn't have the power to put a lot of guys away. So a lot of guys trying to just mount a comeback against him. But Jake Matthews again is very solid, and he's kind of putting a win streak together. So good job for Jake Matthews. And again, hopefully he gets a ranked opponent. That's coming out, maybe like a Gilbert Burns, which I think that could be a winnable matchup for Burns, but it's a fair fight at this point in both of their careers. All right, now moving on, we got Max Griffin versus Chris Curtis. Now, I picked Chris Curtis to win the fight. Let me just say this was a terrible fight. Like the only highlight of this fight was the fact that Max Griffin threw a groin strike in the first round, and I couldn't really see it clearly because the UFC's camera team is like terrible and they can't get good angles on a groin shot. All right. I don't know what to say about that. Like I thought it didn't hit Chris Curtis, but I think everyone else was saying that it hit the grazed the cup or something. So I guess Max Griffin threw a groin shot. And outside of that, nothing really happened. Max Griffin constantly on the back foot running away from Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis was able to get some punches, but he never really pressed the action. He was just like trotting around, like just like slowly stalking his prey. But he didn't really make any first moves. And that ultimately made for a dull fight because again, Max Griffin fighting out the back foot. Chris Curtis kind of just staring at him, throwing the high guard, occasionally throwing punches. I'm be real. It made me want to wish that Chris Curtis didn't win the fight because I don't know. I see this a lot in Chris Curtis fights. Like he doesn't really engage anything, and then wonders why his fights are boring. Like, if Chris Curtis really engaged in the pocket and stuff like that first, I wouldn't mind Chris Curtis, but it's just that he doesn't engage at all. And then, like, because his opponent isn't engaging, which why the fuck would you engage against Chris Curtis? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of just baffling to me. So overall, I think Chris Curtis, eh, I don't think he's gonna go that far in middleweight. I'm sorry, welterweight. And as for Max Griffin, I think he should retire. He's basically gonna be fed to like the next upcoming prospect at this point, and I don't understand how Max Griffin is gonna stay in the UFC at this point because he has a loss to Chris Curtis, Michael Chiesa, and Neil Magny. Max Griffin, I don't think at this point is UFC caliber, and I'd be genuinely surprised if he's still on the roster after this event. All right, now moving on to the main card, we got Junior Tafa versus Tuco Tokos. Now, I was kind of scared for Tuco Tokos because Junior Tafa, I'm sorry, kind of leaned up. He's not a fat blob, but unfortunately for Junior Tafa, his skills resemble that of a fat blob. Because Tuco Tokos proceeded to dominate him on the ground. Now on the feet, Junior Tafa was able to pick apart Tuco Tokos every time, and at some point was able to badly hurt Tuco Tokos. But every time Tuco Tokos shot for a takedown, Junior Tafa literally didn't know what to do. He just kind of stood there accepting the fact that Tuco Tokos was going to shoot a takedown and try to take him down. Duco Tokos just ragdolled him on the ground, ultimately securing a arm triangle choke in the second round. Junior Tafa, again, I'd genuinely be surprised if he's in the roster, like, after this event. I don't know how many losses he has, like, 3 in a row, and he's, like, 2-4 in the UFC. Like, I think it's worse than his brother's record. So, Junior Tafa, off the BKFC you go. Just don't fight in MMA fights anymore. It's very depressing, watching you like whenever you get taken down because you clearly don't want to work on wrestling and jujitsu. Like his striking again is really good, but again, it's fucking light heavyweight unranked section, so it can't be that good. And at this point, Junior Tafa, I don't know what to do with him. He lost to everybody, including the guy that every prospect fights as a stepping stone into Gotokos. But as for Tuco Tokos, congrats to him. He actually finally got a win in the UFC, and I guess he gets to keep his job for a little longer. So, I guess great job for Tuco Tokos. All right, now moving on, we got Vitor Petrino versus Austin Lane. All right, now I guess how good is Anthony Smith? Anthony Smith submitted Vitor Petrino with a guillotine in the first round, and Vitor Petrino submitted Austin Lane with a rear naked choke in the first round. I don't know what to do with him. He's lost so many fights over his last couple of fights. Like, I think the only fight he won was against Robelis Spain, who's cut from the UFC. And Austin Lane is on the highlight reels of like any like semi decent heavyweight slash light heavyweight moving up to heavyweight. Do I still believe in Vitor Petrino? No. I think he's gonna need like 2 more wins before he makes me forget about the fact that he got guillotined by Anthony Smith in the first round. But Vitor Petrino, I guess he's better than like the average unranked heavyweight because Austin Lane is the average unranked heavyweight. And I guess Vitor Petrino, he can actually make a career out of himself in the heavyweight division because he's probably going to be fighting a bunch of blobs until he gets to like the top 10 area. And then from there, maybe he can win a couple of matchups. But yeah, I just thought that Austin Lane looked terrible. He didn't know how to defend back takes. Meanwhile, Vitor Petrino, he wasn't very confident in like his jiu-jitsu transitions, but ultimately he was able to get the job done. So I'm not gonna criticize him that much here. All right, now moving on, we got Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charrier. Now this was a pretty sad fight. I thought that Nate Landwehr was doing pretty well. Like I know round one, Morgan Charrier won. But then round two, Nate Landwehr was starting to pick up volume. He was starting to look like the Nate Landwehr of old and started picking apart Morgan Charrier with these weird angles and jabs and shit. Ultimately, however, Morgan Charrier said fuck all technique. In the third round, he just went out there swinging big meaty hooks against Nate Landwehr, pinned Landwehr up against the fence, and then just cracked him with three devastating shots. Brutally dropped Nate Landwehr and then tried to follow up before the ref stopped the fight. It was very sad because, Nate Landwehr was actually winning the fight, I guess, and Morgan Charrier just suddenly clipped him, and then Nate Landwehr couldn't do anything else. I It's tough for Nate Landwehr, honestly. Like I think he should retire at this point, especially because he's coming off this loss and also the loss to Duo Choi, where like Duo Choi absolutely destroyed him. And as for Morgan Charrier, uh, good job. I still don't think he's gonna be ranked level. I still think he's a little bit overrated, but he proved me wrong. And overall, I think Morgan Charrier, he just had a brutal knockout. All right, Nate Landwehr got caught, and I can't really complain about that, honestly. All right, now moving on to the feature fight of the card, we got Calvin Kattar versus Steve Garcia. Again, another very depressing fight. Calvin Kattar on his Tony Ferguson arc at this point because I think he's lost 5 fights in a row. Granted, these are against good levels of competition, but again, Calvin Kattar, he just doesn't move the same that he used to. I think Steve Garcia, like, yeah, he looked pretty good. And the fact that he dominated 3 rounds does tell me that, like, he's improving his cardio and all that. And he can actually hang with, like, the top of the division. But at the same time, it just felt like Calvin Kattar couldn't move the way he used to. He really didn't have any output in the fight. He just kind of stood there letting Steve Garcia work on him. Steve Garcia was very close to putting away Calvin Kattar at some points of the fight, but unfortunate for Calvin Kattar because I think he's tough for his own good, and he just stuck there the entire fight, taking devastating blows. And at this point, I don't know what Calvin Kattar should do. Honestly, he should retire, but I'm not even sure if he's gonna do that. But as for Steve Garcia, he actually proved that he can go 3 rounds and win a dominant fight. So good job for him. My expectations for Steve Garcia is like roughly around the top 10, maybe around like the top 8. And from there, it's going to be like very matchup dependent. But overall, good job for Steve Garcia. And as for Calvin Kattar, like, it's just sad because he's clearly lost a lot of athleticism, and he's not able to move the way he used to in his prime, like when he fought like Giga Chikadze, or like any of the other guys at the come up. All right, now moving on, we got Stephen Thompson versus Gabriel Bonfim for the co-main event. Now, I have a lot of problems with this co-main event, mainly the fact that Gabriel Bonfim won this fight. All right, rounds 2 and 3, I clearly thought that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson won. Like rounds 2 and 3, especially, Wonderboy was picking apart Bonfim with his head kicks, with the left leg that he ultimately injured at the end of the second round. And Gabriel Bonfim won the fight via clinching up against the fence and having like 10 seconds worth of control time. All right, now like round one, I understand that Gabriel Bonfim won. He was able to ragdoll Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He was able to throw a lot of leg kicks against Thompson, and that kind of hindered Wonderboy's movement. So I give the first round to Gabriel Bonfim. Round two, Stephen Thompson wobbled Gabriel Bonfim with a head kick badly and was landing the better shots. So that one clearly went to Stephen Thompson. And then in the third round, again, you can call it a close round, but what exactly did Gabriel Bonfim do? He didn't really throw any damaging shots. He didn't really have long amounts of control time. Steven Thompson was getting the better shots, and he was able to get back up to his feet every time Gabriel Bonfim shot him for a takedown, or even took him down for like a 2-3 seconds. So overall, I think this fight was a robbery. Fuck the Nashville judges. Gabriel Bonfim should not have won that fight. And I'm just gonna call Gabriel Bonfim the new Mario Bautista because he kind of bitched out in order to win a like he shouldn't even won this, but he won the fight, I guess. But yeah, it just really rubbed me the wrong way the fact that Gabriel Bonfim won the fight. So yeah, fuck him, and I hope he gets slept in his next fight. And as for Wonder Boy, I don't know. I don't think he announced his retirement there, but I think it's time for Wonder Boy to retire. Like the UFC's not gonna do him any favors. The UFC is probably gonna give him to like the next grappling phenom because Gabriel Bonfim was a submission phenom, before this fight, and ultimately Gabriel Bonfim, I guess, kind of got fraud checked because he was supposed to like submit Stephen Thompson like by the second round, but Gabriel Bonfim again shouldn't have won this fight, and I picked Bonfim, so I'm not coping here exactly. I thought Stephen Thompson won the fight, and it's just really pissing me off, and I'm gonna move on before I get even more mad. All right, now on to the main event. We got Derrick Lewis versus Tallison Texeira. Derrick Lewis does it again. He just TKO'd a fucking taxi cab driver from Brazil. You know, I guess Derrick Lewis. I guess he's the favela slayer. He'll just throw some random bullshit and it'll work against any Brazilian he faces. I thought Tallison Teixeira was going to win this fight, but no. Derrick Lewis was able to catch Tallison Teixeira at the tip of the jaw with a left hook, and then down goes Tallison Teixeira. And then from there, Derrick Lewis ground and pound, nasty ground and pound, and Tallison Teixeira was able to get back up, but he was holding onto the cage, and then Jason Herzog called out the fight. It's kind of a weird stoppage, but at the same time, Teixeira shouldn't be holding up against the fence in order to keep himself up. But we gotta talk more about Derrick Lewis because in his post fight, he did a lot of things. He took his pants off. He threw his pants into the crowd. He went to a certain corner and started peeing like a dog, and then marking his territory. He talked about how he's gonna plow his wife right after this, and he mooned the crowd. Typical vintage Derrick Lewis post fight interview. I thought it was very funny. Unfortunately, we're not gonna get a legitimate heavyweight prospect anytime soon. Unfortunately, Tallison Teixeira is not the answer we were looking for to be like somewhat of a competitive challenger against Tom Aspinall. But Derrick Lewis, he's not that far off a title shot, which is crazy to say in 2025. I think Dana White is gonna look at Derrick Lewis as like, a marquee name. Now, is he gonna beat Tom Aspinall? Probably not. But I think people would recognize Derrick Lewis's name. I think Dana White wouldn't mind the fact that Derrick Lewis gets a title shot off like maybe one more win. And ultimately, Derrick Lewis, good job to him because I thought he was gonna be sitting duck. I thought Tallison Teixeira was gonna pick him apart before finding the knockout shot in like maybe rounds 2 or 3. And Derrick Lewis was able to prove that Tallison Teixeira is a little bit too green. So great job to Derrick Lewis, and I hope he celebrates well. All right, that's gonna be it for today's video. Again, my main issues with this card was the co-main event, but outside of that, I'd say it was like a 7 out of 10. I'm just like nitpicking like some prelim fights here and there, which I'm be real, like I didn't really expect much to be honest, so I couldn't be that disappointed. But yeah, either way, let me know in the comments down below how you guys would have rated UFC Nashville, Derrick Lewis versus Tallison Teixeira. And until tomorrow, I'll see you guys later. Peace.